I wanted to do a little story time from 1994, Speaker Builder magazine, home theater on the cheap. Now, this one really inspired me back then because the first amp that I had for home theater in Hawaii when I felt like when I was an adult, my buddy at work bought a new car. I think he just bought like a little Prelude or whatever, and it had a Rockford Punch 60 IX in it, and Punch 60, yeah, IX. Where's the I? I can't remember now. Anyways, I think it was the IX, and it's 2x30. But also one of the things that they used to advertise back then was that the amplifier had the ability to do what's called tri-mode or mixed mono. And basically the ability to bridge the amp simultaneously running it stereo. And so basically what you do is, and that's what this article is. I'll read you the whole thing, but I wanted to specialize in this real quick because this really inspired me to get into speaker building and really kind of, the biggest thing was buying home theater was insanely expensive. And I, at the time I made $7 an hour. I mean, I didn't have any rent to pay or electricity to pay, but $7 an hour is still not a lot, especially living in Hawaii. And basically I figured out through Meniscus, I was going to buy these little, actually I did buy them. They were some little 5-inch, 8 ohm, and they had a bucking magnet on them, and they were from, I think they were for a brand called Oratone that Rockford's factory, at the time it was called Carbonu. It was before Rockford bought them, and they were making these little 5-inch drivers that were being clearanced out through Meniscus, and I bought a bunch of them, and I made some really cool ported boxes for home theater with like wood grain finish, and what else? I made Sherry a pair, and my friend Barry a pair, and then I think I made some other stuff. So, but my dream goal for me was to do a setup like this, which is an overhead looking of your setup. This is the amp, the 2x30, 30 watts. And then if you look close, so what I was going to do is a Doppelito arrangement up front. So I have 8 ohm, 8 ohm, and you wire them in parallel to get 4 ohm. And then I was just going to use an 8 ohm tweeter, mostly because the sensitivity on it is so high, you actually want the mids to be 4 ohm relative to how sensitive the tweeter is, so that way they can kind of keep up. Plus this amp is 2 ohm stable, so that's not a problem at all for this amplifier. And then of course repeat on the other side. And if the tweeter was still too bright, because the one I was using was a JBL knockoff of a titanium tweeter that I got from, it was actually too high in the FS. I didn't know at the time when I was building it. Or when I was acquiring products, because I never made this. So I never got to make this. I ended up getting out of the military quick enough and whatever. It just didn't get it. It wasn't a priority. So these were my plans. And there was plans for a center channel too, but when I read about the not needing the center channel, I was like, yeah, you don't need a center channel. That's dumb. The surround you still needed, because back then there wasn't any decoding and there wasn't processors that were cheap or anything like that. And they had what's called the Dolby Surround Sound 2, which was just all it was is a configuration of the rear speakers, and they were running mono off of the bridged amp. So, and basically what they do is they'd say, on the back of the receiver, it would say, don't run anything below 16 ohm, or don't run at anything below 8 ohm, or whatever it was. And so that's all Dolby Surround was. And sometimes later on they would do DSP and they would just add a delay and things like that. And you could choose the milliseconds in which you could add the delay for the surround. But in this way, what I did was I used the same drivers so that that way I could get timbre matching, meaning that you had a sort of a unity surround. You didn't want to differentiate between front and rear, like these sound a little more high or whatever. And so, and I was going to use the same tweeters, but the surrounds actually had to use a tweeter on the front and the back, and then there was another design where we could actually put the tweeter on top, firing up at the ceiling. And basically, the listener was right about here. Where this area is. I'm drawing with my left hand, so I'm having a really hard time. It's not working. So basically you sit there, And then this was in my milk crates that were holding up my television. It was hidden back there. And basically this was left, this was right, and then this was left surround, right surround. And there was two types. There was a bipolar setup, and Polk Audio actually had a switch where you could switch them from bipolar or dipolar. So dipolar is where one is playing positive, and then the other driver is playing negative. And so I wanted to wire these up so that I could switch them back and forth to decide. And really all it is you just need two terminals, and then you can sit there and play with the polarity on one side, and you can play with the polarity of whether the side facing forward would be the negative or the side away from you would be the negative. So that's one for dipolar. And then bipolar is just both of them being positive and pushing the sound out in positive phase with the front speakers. So if you understand that. So, but basically the speakers in the back would get wired in series with 16 ohm. And then again, I would use the 8 ohm L pad to control the level on it. Same thing here. Again, I was using that. It was only like $13 from MCM. It was a JBL knockoff titanium tweeter that had the facets on it like a diamond. It looked really cool. And they were very, very loud. They're like, I want to say 94 dB sensitivity. They handled probably like 40 watts and just super loud. So you had to really put an L pad on them to tame them. And then what you do is you then put a master L pad on here at 8 ohm, like 100 watt, that would then go bridged to the punch 60. And so what this basically does is if this is getting 30 watts, this would get 60 watts total because it's an 8 ohm load and it's bridged. I think that's right. Yeah, 4 ohm, 4 ohm. So you end up with 30, 30, 30, 30. And also since it's 2 ohm, so then this bridged would be 4 ohm, 4 ohm. This is 4 ohm, 4 ohm, so that the amp would see 2 ohm and 2 ohm as a final impedance load. Again, over the bandwidth, the pass band, which would be from 100 hertz and up. That's it. And then for the subwoofer, I was still wanted to run this. I actually wanted to run a dual 2 ohm single, I think probably like a 12, and then inductors on each coil. And then again, you can either do bridged or whatever. So it doesn't really matter. But I wanted to just show you that. But that's what this covers, home theater on the cheap. It's basically being able to get Dolby surround sound 2 and simultaneous, which is this is a summed signal, a mono signal, plus stereo left and right, and still stay within the impedance of the amplifier. So you can also do it with an amp that's 4 ohm stable, but you just have to use 16 ohm drivers, which were not as popular. And then occasionally I would come across stuff, and then it would ignite the project again inside me. There was a minute where Parts Express was selling some 12 ohm speakers, and I thought about doing it again and again. I got too busy. I always put my personal projects last. So, because that's how important they are. Other people's projects are more important. So, but I'm going to eat some lunch real quick, and then I'll go ahead and do story time with the loudspeaker cook, or not loudspeaker cook, with the Speaker Builder magazine. So, love you guys.